Leaked Team Europe party bus footage, USA is terrified. Those were the chants echoing through a moving coach on Long Island after Team Europe won the Ryder Cup. This wasn't just any celebration, this was raw emotion, spilling out after 3 brutal days at Bethpage Black. Inside that bus, champagne was flying. Players were climbing over seats. The Ryder Cup trophy was being passed around like a golden prize. This is what victory looks like when the pressure finally breaks, and they had every reason to celebrate hard. Europe just pulled off something huge. They beat Team USA 15-13 at Bethpage Black. This was their first win on American soil in 13 years. The last time they did this was back in 2012 at Medina. That's a long time to wait. But here's what makes it even sweeter. 4 years ago in 2021, Europe got destroyed, 19-9. It was their worst loss ever. Everyone said American golf was taking over. They said Europe's old way of doing things was done. Rory McIlroy even admitted his team used those words as fuel. They let the critics motivate them, and now 4 years later, they came back to America and won. So on the surface, this looks like a feel-good story. A team fights back from a crushing defeat. They endure a hostile crowd. They prove the doubters wrong. They celebrate like champions. What could possibly be wrong with that? But here's the thing. This leaked footage isn't just a party. It's a cultural flashpoint. It's a symptom of a deep, ugly battle for golf's soul. Let's talk about what they went through to get to that bus. The Bethpage Black course is brutal. It's narrow fairways, deep rough, punishing bunkers. It's designed to break you down physically and mentally, one player said. Finishing 18 holes there was so draining he couldn't imagine going out for another match right away. But the course wasn't even the hardest part. The crowd was. New York sports fans are intense. Everyone knows this, but at Bethpage, something crossed a line. The atmosphere wasn't just loud, it was venomous. It was toxic. Media reports used those exact words, and one player got the worst of it. Rory McIlroy became the main target. The heckling wasn't normal sports trash talk. People yelled crude insults about his marriage. They used homophobic slurs. It got so personal that his wife Erica was hit by a beverage thrown from the crowd. Think about that. A player's wife getting hit with a drink. That's not passion. That's abuse. McIlroy tried to keep his composure, but eventually he cracked. Cameras caught him shouting at the gallery to shut up. He made rude gestures at the crowd. These were moments of raw frustration that went viral instantly, and then came the ultimate disgrace. The official master of ceremonies for the event, comedian Heather McMahon, was caught on video leading a chant into a live microphone. What was she chanting? A profane insult directed at Rory? This wasn't some random drunk fan. This was an officially sanctioned representative of the tournament. She was literally hired to be there. The PGA of America later announced she was gone and issued an apology. But the damage was already done. They had lost control of their own event. This context is critical. The fan behavior was a disgrace. But does that justify what happened on the bus? Does one bad act excuse another? Before we show you the other side of this, let me know in the comments. Was the crowd behavior the worst you've ever seen in golf? Hit that subscribe button because the story gets much darker. Now let's talk about that celebration, because it wasn't just a spontaneous release of emotion. It was something more calculated. This was a sophisticated act of narrative reclamation. Think about it. For 3 days, the story was about American fan failure. The media was saturated with reports about the hostile galleries, the personal insults, the institutional disgrace of that MC leading a profane chant. Europe was being painted as survivors of American ugliness. But the bus ride changed all that. It was a deliberate course correction. The chants weren't random. They were tactical. They were specific. They were targeted. Europe's on fire. USA is terrified. This wasn't just a victory song. It was a direct inversion of the partisan roars they had endured for 3 days. They took the language of intimidation and turned it back on the American fans. It was psychological warfare set to music. Then there was the chant for McIlroy. He's in your head. Rory, Rory, Rory. This was a direct response to the abuse he suffered. It reframed everything. Instead of being a victim, McIlroy became the protagonist. The message to American fans was clear. Your obsession with him backfired. He's living rent-free in your heads, and it cost you the cup. And here's the part that really reveals what this was. The footage wasn't accidentally leaked. It was filmed by insiders. Justin Rose's caddy was recording. The team's own social media crew was there with cameras. This wasn't a private moment that got out. This was calculated content. It was brand building disguised as a party. Team Europe knew exactly what they were doing. They were creating their own counter-programming. They hijacked the final chapter of the story. Instead of Europe survives hostile crowd, the headline became Europe triumphs and revels in victory. Let's look at who was driving the celebration. McIlroy was at the center of everything. After enduring the most intense personal abuse of any player all week, he was now leading chants and getting drenched in champagne. His enthusiastic participation was vindication. He'd been pushed to his breaking point on the course. Now his joy on the bus was his final answer to everyone who tried to break him. This wasn't just celebration, it was payback. Shane Lowry was another key figure. He's the one who holed the crucial putt that secured the cup for Europe. His celebration was pure triumph. Reports say he was draped in the Irish flag. He was spraying champagne everywhere. Later that night at the hotel, witnesses saw him standing on a table with the trophy in one hand, singing at the top of his lungs. This is the image of a warrior who just won his battle. National pride was flowing through every moment. Then there's team captain Luke Donald. In most sports, the coach or captain stays somewhat composed. They might smile and celebrate, but they maintain some dignity. Not Donald. He was fully immersed immersed in the chaos. He was soaked in champagne during the on-course celebrations. He was active on the bus. His presence sent a clear message. This wild, defiant team culture wasn't just tolerated, it was endorsed from the very top. His leadership style created an environment where this kind of release was not only possible but encouraged. Tommy Fleetwood had one of the most memorable moments. When the team was chanting "Europe's on fire, USA is terrified," Fleetwood turned directly to the camera. He delivered a perfect, swaggering gesture, just a simple sound, but it captured the entire mood. Pure confidence, total dominance. That one moment became iconic because it showed how aware they were of the cameras. They knew this was being filmed, they knew it would go viral, and they played to it perfectly. This brings us back to the evolution of the team bus itself. It's not just transportation anymore. The traditional team room used to be the sacred space. It was private, a place to gather, focus, and bond away from the world. But the party bus has replaced that in many ways. It serves a similar function, but with a modern twist. It's still where players let down their guard and bond. But unlike the locked-door team room of the past, the bus is permeable. It's designed for content. The players at Bethpage were actually looking forward to this bus ride before the tournament even ended. Reports say they talked about it as a key part of their victory ritual. This tradition gained real prominence after their win in Rome in 2023. Since then, it's become expected. The party bus is now as much a part of winning the Ryder Cup as lifting the trophy. But here's what's changed. What feels spontaneous is actually performance. What looks like a private moment is actually public content. The line between authentic team culture and strategic brand narrative has completely dissolved. But wait, it gets even more deliberate. One chant, reportedly led by McIlroy himself, asked, "Are you watching?" Donald Trump? Trump had been at the tournament on Friday. Many analysts said his presence emboldened the crowd's worst behavior. So this chant deliberately injected politics into golf. It linked the fan ugliness to a political figure, and Trump actually responded on social media saying, "Yes, I'm watching." Congratulations. It turned a sports moment into political theater. So what we're seeing here isn't just joy, it's strategy. The bus has become the modern version of the old team room. Traditionally, the team room was a private sanctuary, a place to swap ideas and focus away from the world. But the party bus is different. It's designed to be seen. The footage is meant to go viral. It's where authentic emotion meets strategic content creation. This is the new reality for modern athletes. Privacy doesn't exist anymore. Everything is content. Everything is brand building. And that brings us to the real problem. This entire incident is a direct collision with golf's identity as the gentleman's game. For over a century, golf has been different from other sports. It's built on unwritten rules that matter more than written ones. Respect, integrity, self-governance. Players shake hands before and after rounds. They call penalties on themselves for infractions nobody else saw. The gallery is supposed to be respectful, silent during shots, polite applause for good play. That was the ideal, but that ideal is fading fast. The polite hush is gone. Now we have fans yelling, "Get in the hole" on every shot. Events like the Waste Management Phoenix Open have stadium atmospheres. Thousands of fans chanting, booing, throwing beer. Bethpage was the extreme version of this trend. The energy didn't just cross a line, it became outright hostility and harassment. Here's what's intellectually dishonest. Some people only blame the players for the bus celebration. They say it was unseemly and contrary to tradition, but that ignores the bigger picture. The breakdown of decorum was a two-way street, and the fans broke the rules first. Look at how the PGA of America handled it. Their response was weak and confused. The CEO Derek Sprague issued a full apology to the McIlroys and Team Europe. He said fans crossed the line and that it wasn't good for golf. That was accountability. But then PGA President Don Ria downplayed it. He compared the insults to what you'd hear at a youth soccer game. He admitted he hadn't even heard some of it. This was a boys will be boys response. It showed an organization that cared more about protecting its reputation than addressing real problems. This leadership vacuum allowed the worst instincts of the crowd to grow. Even McIlroy, who had every right to be angry, admitted the breakdown. He said golf must be held to a higher standard. He said respect was not on display that week. Think about that. The victim of the abuse still acknowledged that something was wrong with the whole situation. The players didn't set out to destroy golf's norms. They felt those norms had already been destroyed by the crowd. Their celebration was a reaction to feeling victimized. But here's the truth. Nobody wants to admit this new rowdy reality isn't an accident. It's the logical outcome of a deliberate commercial strategy. The governing bodies wanted this. The Ryder Cup isn't marketed as a polite contest anymore. It's sold as a passionate tribal rivalry. Official promotional materials promise drama, tension, and conflict. They package the event as a biennial culture war fought on fairways. This shift was fueled by conscious business decisions. They expanded alcohol sales on the course. They embraced stadium-style seating. The media narrative emphasizes nationalistic conflict. They successfully sold the Ryder Cup as more than golf. It's theater. It requires heroes and villains, passion and conflict, triumph and humiliation. The hostile fans at Bethpage and the defiant players on the bus were simply fulfilling roles they'd been cast in by the event's own marketing. So the crisis of decorum isn't a bug. It's a feature of the modern Ryder Cup business model. Outrage generates clicks. Viral clips of conflict drive social media engagement. Controversy builds anticipation for the next event. The organizers now struggle to control the very product they created. And here's where it gets really serious: the financial risk. This chaos chaos poses a real, quantifiable threat to the corporate sponsors who pour hundreds of millions into golf. The sport has always been a premium marketing platform for luxury brands, financial services companies, luxury car makers, high-end watch brands, premium spirits. These companies chose golf because of its image, precision, patience, honor, quiet confidence. A sponsorship deal was seen as safe and blue chip, but Bethpage changed that calculation. Now there's reputational risk. The image of players chanting on a party bus might appeal to younger fans, but it could terrify a Swiss watchmaker or a wealth management firm whose brand is built on restraint and sophistication, and this risk has real financial consequences. Academic research shows that athlete misconduct creates a spillover effect. When players engage in inappropriate behavior, the negative impact hits team sponsors hard. In the 10 trading days after a negative event, team sponsors can see their stock price drop between negative 0.3% and over negative 1%. For large companies, this is massive. The mean impact of a single misconduct incident is a loss of $157 million in market capitalization. The median loss is $44.7 million, and media coverage makes it worse. The more attention an incident gets, the bigger the stock price hit. Here's why this matters for golf specifically. The sport has always operated in a different tier than other sports. Sponsors aren't just buying advertising space, they're buying association with values. When a financial services company sponsors a golf tournament, they're telling their wealthy clients that they share golf's principles: discretion, excellence, tradition. These aren't just marketing words, they're the foundation of billion-dollar business relationships. But what happens when those values appear compromised? When the event looks less like a gentleman's competition and more like a beer-soaked stadium rivalry, sponsors start asking hard questions. Their marketing teams have to explain to boards why their brand is associated with controversy. Their competitors start whispering that maybe golf isn't the safe investment it used to be. The damage isn't always immediate, it's cumulative. Each incident adds to a growing perception that golf's premium positioning is slipping, and once that perception takes hold, it's incredibly difficult to reverse. The Bethpage incident puts this entire dynamic at risk. League sponsors and stadium sponsors might not feel the impact, but team sponsors, the ones directly associated with the players and their behavior, face real exposure. The research is clear on this point. When team-affiliated athletes cross lines, their sponsors pay the price. Now, the bus celebration wasn't a crime, but it falls into a gray area of inappropriate behavior that generated widespread critical media coverage. For sponsors, the specific nature doesn't matter. It's about public perception. The optics of alcohol, loud chanting, and taunting a political figure could easily be seen as a negative event by a risk-averse corporate board. If the Ryder Cup keeps going down this path of escalating hostility and wild celebrations, it risks losing the corporate partners that bankroll everything. Sponsors want certainty and positive associations. Bethpage offered neither. The question for these brands is whether increased viewership from the edgier product is worth the increased reputational and financial risk. So, what was this leaked footage really? A harmless party, cynical marketing, or a symptom of a sport that sold its soul? Here's a different way to look at it. Maybe this is exactly what golf needs. The gentleman's game was an ideal, sure, but it was also sterile and unrelatable. For decades, it locked out the average fan. Golf felt exclusive and boring to most people. What we see on that bus is passion. It's human, it's raw, it's what every other major sport thrives on. Yes, lines were crossed on both sides. The fans were abusive, the players were defiant. But for the first time, the reflection in that mirror is real. It's not some polished, corporate-approved version of emotion. It's actual feeling. The quiet, deferential era of the Ryder Cup is over. This is the new normal. The real question is, can golf handle it? Is this new, louder, and more complicated future better for the sport? Or is it the beginning of the end? Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more.